Good morning, everyone. Please find the place that you want to sit. And a big mahalo to Sakshi Zion for that lovely prelude music. And if you just arrived, don't worry, there'll be plenty more between now and the end of the service. My name's Pasha McGregor. I'm the facilitator this morning, and Sakshi is wearing two hats. He's both uh, um, musician and presenter. So we are going to start today's service with reading from Science of Mind magazine, and Charlie will do the honors. And you'll stand in front of this, and um, it's somewhat adjustable if it needs to be.
Okay. The title is called Grow, Grow, Grow. And the traditional Jewish saying is behind every blade of grass, there's a special angel whispering, Grow, grow. And Ernest Holmes has, um, here and now we are surrounded by and immersed in an infinite good. And here's the message. I love the Jewish saying above. It's such a great reminder that the divine reality principle is everywhere present and it desires goodness and growth for each of us. We can think about this in the spiritual realm and in the physical realm. We are all blades of grass, and I think grow, grow is a message of encouragement, a message that says, be who you came here to be. This saying also reminds me that we never do this alone. To have a fulfilling life, we must surround ourselves with people committed to our good and our growth, people who support us without conditions, simply because they see the truth of us as wonderful beings. Just as it's important to surround ourselves with people who support our growth, it's also important to be that angel for other people, to gently whisper, grow, to be a place of support, and to remind others there is good in the universe and that they ought to have it. The world is a wondrous place, especially when we remember the divine nature is good and know that we are always immersed in that goodness. Today, be the angel for someone else, whispering encouragement in their ear, and pay attention to all the angels whispering in your ear. The affirmation is today I offer words of encouragement to others and notice all the ways I am encouraged. I am immersed in an infinite good. And then I say parts of it and everybody repeats it. Today I offer words of encouragement
Yeah, I offer words of encouragement
to others and notice all the ways I am encouraged.
to others and notice all the ways I am encouraged.
I am immersed in an infinite good.
I am immersed in an infinite good.
Thank you.
Mm, wonderful. So thank you, Charlie. And I think that's got so much in it. We should just take a little time of silence to kind of consider and process and see what is speaking to you out of what that reading. And I need to do that duty of modern day facilitators and remind everybody to silence your cell phone, even if it makes a pleasant sound. So I'll signify when the meditation is over with the chimes. Bring your consciousness back to this room. Welcome to any new people who appeared while our eyes were closed. And welcome also to the live stream audience. Glad that you can be with us in consciousness, even if not in your bodies. So I want to welcome everyone to New Thought Center of Hawaii. And I got a tip that there's at least one new person who hasn't been before. So I will talk a little bit about New Thought, who we are. Um, it can be a little confusing to figure out because if you came like 3 or 4 consecutive Sundays, you might get different impressions of what is New Thought all about. Um, Depending, like last week was Tai Chi, for instance. Um, this week is Gnostic Gospels. Uh, Next week is poetry. But there is some kind of a, unifying force. Or, and I will. Well, first I'll tell you the way I responded last week when a new person said we were having lunch after the service, and she said, "Is it always that good?" and and I, without thinking, I just said, "Well, it's different weeks. It's good in different ways, kind of like different flavors of ice cream." So um, I think another facilitator recently said, "Well, this is kind of a bring your own church kind of situation, but you could also say this is kind of a Baskin Robbins interpretation of church." And if you're more attracted to chocolate chip mint, you might come making more of an effort to come on those Sundays, and someone else would come for Rocky Road or orange sherbet. But but what I've because I'm on the board, I come almost every week, and what I've observed is that it's it's almost always good for me. And sometimes the flavors I didn't think I liked especially turn out to be terrific. So anyway, we've New Thought Center of Hawaii and its predecessor churches um, have been in existence since 1971. And considering we have been intentionally without a minister since the mid 80s, I think that's kind of a miracle. um, so, who is that? Well, there may be more than one. If the new person or people are willing to say who they are and how they happen to come here this morning, I would be interested to know. If you're comfortable doing that, raise your hand. Oh, did you know about it from the sign on the road or? Okay, okay. Well, welcome, Linda. I'm glad you decided to actually physically come and check it out. Okay. Also, I thought maybe we should give a little attention to people who either were returning after a long absence, like maybe you haven't been here in 6 months. Is there anyone in that category? Close. Okay, maybe 2 or 3 months. Okay, so that's like Sarah and um, yeah. You see, you stay away too long and people start forgetting your names. Garth, Garth and Sarah, welcome. How about people who are here this morning, but pretty soon they have to go somewhere else, like to their other home in the mainland or something. Oh. Okay, so that would be Lloyd. And Lloyd, where's your other home? Hmm. Okay. With okay. So welcome. Glad you could be here this morning. And for the live stream people that didn't hear what he said, it's Lloyd is here. Martha's not here because she's recovering from a surprise appendicitis surgery, and but they're both going to be returning to their other home in Colorado within 2 weeks. And Martha, if you're watching the live stream, we send you best excellent wishes for your quick and complete recovery. Um, so then the next thing I see on our agenda is that we get another song from Sakshi the musician.
I'm gonna play a song by Paramahansa Yogananda. He wrote many beautiful compositions, and this is actually I'm learning many of his songs now, but this is actually the first one I ever learned of his many, many years ago. It's called Door of My Heart. I'll sing this to open our hearts to the conversation and gnosis today. So the lyrics are pretty simple. They repeat over and over. So if you get them, try to sing along. Lord of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I search for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I seek for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, night and day. I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing you, my Lord? Night and day, night and day, I search for thee night and day. Night and day, night and day, I search for thee night and day. Night and day, night and day, I search for thee night and day. Night and day, night and day, I search for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Open wide I keep for thee.
So now I'm going to invite whoever feels moved to come up and confess their sins. Actually, this is the time that we share the miracles and ordinaries in our lives. And I was thinking that because that's, if you've come a few times, you know that is likely to be, there's a place to do that. Maybe you're more noticing of the miracles in your life. Whereas if you were invited to confess your sins, you might be more focused on that. So many people in the New Thought movement have been inspired by A Course in Miracles, and I've think there's dozens of definitions of miracles in the course, but um, one that I like is that miracles are special happenings, insights, and they're miracles. They feel like miracles because they're unexpected and they remind us of truth. They change us, but they're also ordinary because they happen in the midst of our ordinary lives. They're the stuff of our ordinary lives. And the lessons are there to serve us right now in this moment. And by sharing it, you make that accessible to other people too. So if anyone would like to share something of that nature, there's a microphone. Just come on up. Yeah, just bend it up a little.
Now is yeah.
Yeah.
I told you about Martha's situation, and the miracle is just how much we came to appreciate what we have here in the Kona Community Hospital and medical care. It was very good. We are very happy. She went in on Monday. She came out on Friday, and for Martha, who's um, loves international folks because of the work she did, she had a great time talking to all the different people. I mean, someone will come in and say, "Well, who are you? Where are you from? Tell me your story." And it was amazing that people from Cambodia, Hmong people, um, people from here, and to her that was the best part of the hospital, aside from the good care she got as far as the surgery and the care she received at the hospital. So to us, it was just a reminder of what a wonderful thing we have in the way of a very diverse community and a wonderful medical facilities.
Mm. If this seems peculiar to anyone, it's this is the international sign language for applause, and this is like even stronger, like maybe standing ovation or
Okay, I hope the sound man left the mic on this time. It's very I, ordinary, happened in an ordinary part of the day. But last week, I went to the Veterans Administration Health Clinic here in Kona to see a doctor. And as I approached the lot, or as I got into this very plain parking lot, which is, hot and dry and nothing special, I could smell a strong aroma of flowers. It smelled really good. But I couldn't find the flowers it was coming from. And I went inside and did my appointment thing and came back out. And it was so strong. It was like you're right in the middle of some kind of like an orange orchard or something. I'm looking around. I went and smelled every flower, not it. And I went, well, sooner or later I'm going to find out. So I got in the car and I just drove down the driveway. And just before I hit the street, there's this huge, what looked like a hedge. I mean, 20 feet high and long, and it's just covered with all these little flowers. And that was it. And it was like the miracle is it's a miracle of appreciation. I guess I wasn't expecting to be blown away by, wow, that's amazing. It's like appreciation of natural beauty. So that's it, folks. Yeah.
thank you, Stephen. So whatever happened inside the doctor's office, it sounded like you got a dose of aromatherapy. I think we have time for one more. Okay, Candy, you got it.
So I strongly believe that miracles are happening all the time. We just don't notice them. And sometimes those miracles are pretty obvious. And I like to think of those as synchronicities. So here are my kids on my property with monstera sticks and leaves and things and following the queen and taking turns being the queen. Who gets that? I mean, such a blessing, right? So this morning I'm running a little late. Oh, I shouldn't stop for coffee, but I have to have coffee. So I stop at Fujihara's, and I recently bought a little hybrid Kia Niro that's dark blue. And as I pull in comes a dark blue Kia Niro right behind me. So cute. So the cuteness is for me a lot of synchronicities, and just noticing those things is really such a beautiful thing. Knowing that there's a path and that things are not as random as we think.
Thank you, Candy. Sakshi, I'm going to actually introduce you now in your speaker role, but if you want to do another song within that, you can, because you can see how spirit prompts you. And first of all, I'm going to invite the lay minister to make her way up here. She's got something for you. Oh, you did it again, Patty. It's the perfect color. It's as though you intuited what shirt he was going to wear. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sakshi. Um, he's originally from Bloomington, Indiana, and he's since become basically kind of a world citizen, but that's where he started. And he developed his leadership and communication skills and served in many capacities as an active member of a unity church there. As a very young man and maybe even a teenager, um, he led Sunday service occasionally, offered workshops, led group meetings on topics such as prosperity, kirtan, sacred songs, story time yoga for kids, and toning the chakras. He also served as a youth mentor and a retreat leader for International Youth of Unity at Unity Village in Missouri. In case anybody doesn't know, that Unity is one of the two main branches of New Thought. Religious Science slash Centers for Spiritual Living is the other one. So that's not basically that means he's very well schooled in New Thought teachings. And, but he's also his spiritual path has also included living as a monk in an ashram with a guru, traveling in India, traveling and performing on a tour called Festival of India around the U.S. and Canada. Um, he has he had a band called Baraka, which performed at venues around the U.S. And he's received initiations into sacred lineages and traditions, learned from a variety of gurus, teachers, and mentors. And when he decided to become an entrepreneur and online marketer, he uh, he put the law of attraction teachings into effect and had interesting experiences with that. He's a member of New Thought and sometimes serves as a music minister, part of our core of music ministers. In fact, he was here 2 weeks ago, I think, in that capacity. And his topic today is the supreme importance of the Gnostic Gospels. Please help me welcome Sakshi Zion. Sakshi, I'm going to turn off my mic and relocate while you're speaking.
This is a song by a friend of mine, Brother Shimshai. And this song actually is coming from a Gnostic tradition. Shimshai also studied like the Essene tradition. So these lyrics are directly coming from a very Gnostic kind of stream of thought. Coming of day, I embrace my mother. Coming of night, I join my father. With the outgoing of the evening and morning, I shall breathe their love. And I will not interrupt these communions till the end of time. No, I will not interrupt these communions till the end of time. Oh, that my words were graven, iron pen on the rock forever. And I know that my Creator living, He shall stand at the edge of time upon the earth and the stars. Yes, I know that my Creator living, she shall stand at the edge of time upon the earth and the stars. Though the words may destroy this body, shall I see Jah? Though the words may destroy this body, shall I see Jah? The outgoing and the morning and evening, I shall breathe their love. Shall I see Jah, till the end of time? Shall I love Jah, until the end of time? Shall I know Jah, till the end of time? Shall I seek Jah, till the end of time? Shall I seek Jah, and Jah I shall find. Mercy and truth shall be met together. Righteousness and peace shall kiss each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth. Glory shall dwell in our land. Mercy and truth shall be met together. Righteousness and peace shall kiss each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth. Glory shall dwell in our land. With the outgoing and the evening and morning, I shall breathe their love. Words may destroy this body, shall I see Jah? And the words may destroy this body, shall I see Jah? With the coming of day, I embrace my mother. With the coming of night, I join my father. With the outgoing and the evening and morning, I shall breathe their love. And I will not interrupt these communions till the end of time. And I will not interrupt these communions till the end of time. And I will not interrupt these communions till the end of time. Shall I see Jah? So Jah I shall find. Shall I see Jah till the end of time? Shall I see Jah? So Jah I shall find. Shall I see Jah till the end of time? Thank you, thank you. Love, love, love that song. All right. So thank you, Pasha, for that amazing introduction. Thank you guys so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be sharing this topic. This topic, for me, is extremely, extremely exciting, um, as well as I feel very liberating, and I feel that it is very relevant and important for people to understand how important the Gnostics and the Gnostic Gospels are. Unfortunately, a lot of people kind of don't know anything about the Gnostics, and it's a shame. And that is not for some random unknown coincidence that they are not well known about. It is directly by design that you don't know about them, actually. The Roman Church diligently went along and tried to destroy every remnant of the Gnostics and the Gnostic Gospels, and try to prevent all of you from knowing about the Gnostics and the Gnostic Gospels. But fortunately, Providence is on our side, and there are reasons why the Gnostics are resurging today, and um, making a reincarnation, you might say, actually, in this time. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but I'm going to explain why I believe that I am a reincarnated Gnostic and why you might also be a reincarnated Gnostic. So, who were the Gnostics? Well, first off, let me just say, like, you heard a little bit about me and how I got into the Gnostics, though, kind of basically touched on what she described as in my own upbringing. Um, when you go to the spiritual search, whether that's the Indian spiritual traditions, Buddhism, Sufism, any esoteric tradition outside of mainstream church or mainstream religion, despite how you were raised or whatever, whether it's Jewish, Christian, Muslim, um, any esoteric tradition outside of the mainstream religions have elements of Gnosticism in them. So you might already be studying Gnostic traditions and Gnostic wisdom without realizing it. So my search in learning about Buddhism and Hinduism and Sufism and Rastafari, unity, all these things, new thought, these all kind of help lead me to uncovering like, where are these teachings coming from? You know, and I'll go into how the new thought and unity movements are related to this stuff too. And um, so these secret teachings, these esoteric traditions from the East to the West, all over the world, you're finding these in um, all the ancient traditions. Every religion has a form of Gnosticism, some scholars may argue. Um, and personally, the way I use the word Gnostic, which is a very controversial term by scholars today, by the way, um, I personally use the term to generalize esoteric teachings. So, um, what does Gnostic mean? The Gnostics were seekers. Gnostic comes from the word gnosis, which means knowledge. Gnosis is related to the words nous, which means mind in Greek, knowledge, um, knowing, obviously, to know. Even words like Genesis and Ganesha, I've described those being related too. These words have a linguistic connection. Um, so Gnostic basically means a seeker of knowledge. That's essentially what it means. If you are a seeker of knowledge, you are a Gnostic, essentially. But the Gnostics were actually um, a wide group of different sects, actually. So there was a group actually called the School of the Gnostics. But then you have the Sethians, you have the Cathars, you have the Manichaeans, you have the Mandaeans, the Essenes. So the Gnostics were many different groups, actually. You have different sects and lineages that were technically Gnostics because they sought a particular path towards enlightenment, which was in opposition to what the church told you the official and only path is, you know. So the Gnostics were the rebels, and they still are. And the Gnostics, the earliest that we hear about the Gnostics actually are from heresiologists. Now, heresiologists are those that they want to write about church heresy, and they want to tell you basically this is a heresy. These are heretics. Stay away from them. Basically, so we have several very famous heresiologists, and they all pretty much come from the Church of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church. Um, Irenaeus of Lyons, he wrote the book Against All Heresies. In 367, Athanasius, Athanasius sent out a letter condemning all apocryphal books, and we'll talk about him in a second. We also have Justin Martyr, Tertullian, Hippolytus of Rome, Clement of Alexandria, Origen of Alexandria, Epiphanius of Salamis, and Eusebius of Caesarea. These are all the most famous heresiologists that we have their works of. Now, here's what's interesting about the heresiologists. Now, these guys were writing against the heretics, against the Gnostics, saying these guys, they practice this weird tradition and they practice this weird tradition. They believe this weird thing about Jesus. They're heretics. Don't follow them, basically. They were trying to basically condemn them and dissuade the early church to stay away from these guys. Now, what they didn't realize was that some of their um, some of their descriptions of the heretics are some of the best documents that we have today about some of these groups. Because we've lost some of their manuscripts, the against heresies, the documents that they wrote against them give us some of the best evidence to tell us, oh, what were the Sethians actually like? What kind of rituals did the Therapeutai actually practice? Philo of Alexandria writes a really excellent description of the Therapeutai, which was a Gnostic group in Alexandria, Egypt, and describes their whole love feast and their monastic lifestyle like that, like this. Um, so we're actually grateful today of these heresiologists for leaving us these gems. That's not what they intended, but we are grateful. Now, let's see. What are some of the major differences between the Gnostics and the Orthodox? Before I say that, be, before I bring up the Gnostic Gospels and the discovery of the Nag Hammadi library, um, what I just mentioned about the heresiologists, their little quotes and little descriptions of these Gnostic groups was literally all we had for like 1,000 years, 1,700 years. It was literally all we had of any evidence of and any strong documentation and artifacts of these Gnostic groups. So we were basically just going off of them. But later we found the Nag Hammadi library, which is very, very exciting. And we're going to talk about that. What are the major differences between the Gnostics, though, and the Orthodox? We could tell some of these things by the heresiologists, actually. Now, Orthodox just means straight. It was considered the straight way to Jesus, to God. and the Orthodox Church ruled. You know, there was a separation later in 1057, the Great Schism, it's called, between the Roman Church and the Eastern Orthodox, and that's a whole nother topic for another day. But the Orthodox and Roman Catholic Church, they they essentially had a very similar doctrine of Christology, right? Where the Gnostics, they have a whole range of Christology, a whole range of traditions that sometimes strongly conflicted with the Orthodox path or doctrines, right? Well, one of the main aspects that differentiate them is the ideas of salvation and resurrection. So, as we know from the traditional Orthodox traditions, traditional Christianity, the idea of salvation is simply that you believe in Jesus, He died for your sins, and you can go to heaven. That's your only way to salvation. Like flat out, that's what the traditional view is. We've all probably heard this. You know, you either believe in Jesus, you go to heaven, or you don't, you go to hell. Like there's just one way, no other way. That's what the Orthodox fundamentalist Christianity wants you to believe. And Gnostic believed in what's called gnosis, attaining wisdom, attaining knowledge, that you could reach salvation through enlightenment, through self improvement, through your own knowledge and wisdom overflowing into becoming like a Buddha, a Christ, a Bodhisattva. Um, this mystical transformation that actually happens within. This is what distinguishes the Gnostics and the Orthodox, is this personal path towards enlightenment, that you had to follow the teachings of Jesus to become like a Christ, as opposed to just believing that Jesus came to save you, and that belief alone is what saved you. So, as you can see, I'm sure some of you are thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like New Thought, right? Well, that's very true. All the Gnostic groups, ancient and modern, New Thought, Unity, Science of Mind, are included, are Gnostic in that sense. They approach the divine, they approach enlightenment through, a very personal, self-motivated practice, right? So this is how we can understand how New Thought, Unity, Science of Mind, they are um, a modern manifestation of the Gnostics, 100%. And there's other groups as well, which I'll talk about. Resurrection, that's the other main differentiation. So the Christians, the fundamentalists, believe that Christ resurrected, and only Christ resurrected, and that was what made him, the Christ, because he was crucified on the cross and he resurrected into, um, the resurrected body of God, basically, and that at the end of times we will all be resurrected at the last days, and that and go to heaven, like this whole rapture idea. Well, the rapture is 100% unbiblical. There's nothing in the Bible about the rapture. It's a later uh, dogma that was added to the tradition. But this idea of a resurrection of the dead is actually coming from the Pharisees. The Pharisees actually had this tradition. So this idea isn't completely modern, but the Gnostics had a different view of resurrection. They believed in the same way that by attaining gnosis, you could become lit up like a fire of God consumes you. And that enlightenment, that mystical transformation that takes place, that becoming the Christ, that going through your own death and resurrection, you are supposed to have a resurrection in this life. And you are supposed to become a Christ in this life and experience heaven in this life. And there is aspects, there's, like I said, there's different Gnostic traditions. You have some Gnostics that were very much into preparing for death, like the ancient Egyptians, and preparing for the soul's ascent, like this. In their whole cosmology and their mystical traditions, you have different metaphysical practices where you have certain mantras or passwords that you want to when the soul is ascending out of the material world into the spiritual world. There are these guardians at the gates of the seven heavens, and you need to know what the passwords are to be able to pass that aeon to the next aeon like this. So you have lots of different um, ideas that the different Gnostic groups had. But essentially, the Gnostics had this very personal resurrection idea, this personal salvation idea, which made them very distinguished and distinct from the Orthodox tradition. And those were one of the main reasons why the Orthodox and the Church of Rome did not like the Orthodox or did not like the Gnostics, because this was really challenging the heart of their doctrine, of their fundamentalist belief. So this was radical even back then. Um, now, uh, let's see. What are some of the other Gnostic groups in history? You have the Nazarenes, which was the original group of Jesus. The Mandaeans, which is a group that followed John the Baptist. There still exists to this day. It's actually one of the only modern Gnostics that still have a continuity from ancient Gnostic tradition is the Mandaeans, and they're a group out of Iraq, and they still to this day follow John the Baptist, and they practice baptism. Very fascinating group, the Mandaeans. You have the Sethians, you have the Elkasites, the Johannites, people who follow mostly John. You had the Nahassines, the Essenes, the school of the Gnostics. Then you have the Manichaeans, those who follow Mani. They merge. They it was one of the Manichaeans is very interesting, actually. They merged Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and esoteric Christianity. And the Manichaeans actually, they almost became a world religion. They went as far as India and China, all the way up in Tibet. The Manichaeans like were really close. They were basically competing with the Church of Rome at the time, but unfortunately, they were stamped out as heretics and brutally killed and slaughtered, which you'll will find out many of the Gnostics, many of the esoteric Christians were also brutally slaughtered and killed. You have the Manichaeans who became the Bogomils, who became the Cathars. The Cathars is this group from southern France um, in the Middle Ages. You have the Knights Templar. You actually had a group of early Christians known as the Luciferians. The Rosicrucians, which is a more modern group, the Order of the Golden Dawn, Hermeticists, even Freemasons, Seventh day Adventists, Branch Davidians, Mormons, Unity, Science of Mind, New Thought, even the Rastafarians. These are all groups, ancient and modern Gnostics. Now, Gnosticism really strongly developed. Now, it had its roots in all the esoteric traditions, whether it's Hinduism, you have different groups that will branch off and have a more esoteric version and sect. You have that in Buddhism. All the major religions will have these esoteric groups. But what happened is in Alexandria, Egypt at the time, this place was like the metropolitan, cosmopolitan mecca of the ancient world at the time. You had the Library of Alexandria, which was the library of the ancient world. So you had people from all over the Near East coming to study there. It was a great university. It said that even Jesus went and got his education in Alexandria, Egypt. You had Buddhists. You had King Ashoka. He sent Buddhist missionaries all the way to Alexandria. You have stelas that still exist today with King Ashoka's, his uh, inscriptions on these stelas to still to this day in these areas of the world where he sent Buddhist missionaries. So you had all the religions of the world coming together and studying and exchanging ideas. You had Kabbalists, Hermeticists, you had these Gnostic groups, you had just a confluence of wisdom and knowledge and this great university of learning here. The Septuagint which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, was also composed in Alexandria, Egypt, right? So this is a phenomenal place. Of course, the Library of Alexandria was burnt down, right? Um, and it's a shame. And so you have this Egyptian Christianity, which later evolved into Coptic Christianity, which still exists today. And so the Gnostics, when you think of the Gnostics today, and we were talking about all these modern groups, right, like Unity and New Thought, and we mentioned like the split between the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of the East. Well, some of these Eastern churches still retain some of these Gnostic elements as well. So you have like the Malankar Church of India, which says that Thomas himself went to India. And there's a great legends and traditions of St. Thomas going to India and starting Christianity there. You have the Ethiopian church, you have the Egyptian Coptic church. Some of these Eastern churches that never conformed to Rome, they still retain some of these early doctrines of the original Jesus movement, um, uh, known as the Nazarenes, right? And then you have like modern groups like the Seventh Day Adventists, for example, who still practice Sabbath on the Saturday and practice vegetarianism primarily. These are remnants of the early Nazarene tradition carried over into a modern Gnostic group today. Now, Seventh day Adventists might not call themselves Gnostic today, but if you go back in their history, research where this is coming from, you can see these are Gnostic elements that they retained. Early church Nazarene tradition. Um, Now, another aspect of the Gnostics in Alexandria, which was really fascinating, is and another distinguishing factor of the Gnostics is that they carried forward the primordial teachings, the secret teachings of all ages, the primordial wisdom of all ages. So the myth and cult of Isis and Osiris, the wisdom teachings of Mithras, the wisdom teachings of Dionysus, all these dying and resurrecting savior traditions, these were carried over by the Gnostics. So you would have like the Naasines, for example, they took this famous hymn of Attis. Now, Attis was this pagan deity. He was associated with the goddess Sybil, who was like the mother goddess. And the Naasines were a Gnostic group. And they took the entire hymn of Attis and they just changed the words Attis and put Christ there. And so they were already aware that Osiris, Dionysus was Christ. And so in the Gnostics, they were redoing and continuing some of the mystery school traditions. So you have the cult of Isis and Osiris, you have the cult of Mithras, Dionysus, Pan, all these ancient traditions where it was like a secret mystery school, like a secret society today. And you had to be initiated, and there was a resurrection ritual. When you were initiated, you basically they put you in a cave and you went into like experience like a death for 3 days, and then you were resurrected and you were like a new man or a new being, and you were given a new name. And this is all done still to this day in Hinduism and Freemasonry. They still redo all these death and resurrection ceremonies, these initiations, and the Eucharist tradition as well. The Dionysian cult had a form of drinking wine and eating the body of the god. The Osiris cult had a version of this where you drank, it was like a wheat cracker with an image of Osiris on it, and they took barley and drank it as like a sacrament. And then Dionysus, he is just Osiris. Like most of the ancient historians will tell you that Dionysus is just the Greek version of Osiris, right? And all the Roman gods, they're like basically they have their Roman and Egyptian or their Greek and Egyptian equivalent, right? It happens today in like Santeria and some of the diaspora traditions where you have these people in the African diaspora, right? Slavery brought them to the Caribbean, and they're practicing their ancient African tradition, but they're merging it and syncretizing it with Catholicism, the religion of the oppressors, right? So in Rome, you sometimes had to do that. You kind of had to. Rome was cool. They were like, I don't know if this is cool, but they were like, you can worship anything you want, just worship the Caesar too. So at the time, Rome was like full of mystery cults everywhere, right? So this stretched all the way into Alexandria, Egypt, and even today. If you go to the Galilee today, where Jesus was born, you have ruins of first century Greek theater. You have in right in the Galilee, the cave of Pan. You have like statues of Orpheus and Dionysus all over the Galilee. So Jesus himself, there's a theory that Jesus wasn't as Jewish the way we think of him today. That he was Jewish, but he was what is called Hellenized Jew, because the Greek influence on the Jewish culture at the time was so strong that Jesus, he may have known Aramaic, he may have even known how to speak Greek. If he was educated in Alexandria, he might have spoken Greek as well. He obviously was aware of the theater, the Dionysian tradition, all like this. So this is a hotly debated topic with scholars today: is how Jewish was Jesus? What's the influence on Egyptian religion? What's the influence of Greek thought on Jesus? Was he a Stoic philosopher? There's lots of different theories on Jesus at this point by scholars, but based on all this evidence now, to me, it seems that he obviously was a very wise person and probably was exposed. I mean, I think there's no doubt about it. I mean, if he was from the Galilee of the first century, he had to have seen these Greek theaters. It was there in his neighborhood in Sepphoris, like which is only like a half hour from Nazareth. So, um, another thing I want to talk about is Pythagoras. Pythagoras is another great philosopher that really influenced this whole stream of thought. Now, like I said, Jesus was probably aware of the Dionysian tradition. He was probably schooled in the Pythagorean tradition as well as Platonism, like Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Pythagoras. These were big people in that time. So it's almost impossible that Jesus wouldn't have been exposed to their philosophies. And Josephus, who is the greatest, or he's the best and one of the only historians of the first century, he says that the Essenes were almost exactly like the Pythagoreans. They dressed in all white, they were vegetarians, they practiced these baptisms and these type of communal meals together. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the early Jesus movement was very similar to the Pythagoreans and had this Platonic kind of philosophy. It wasn't exactly what we think of Judaism today. Even Judaism today is drastically different to what mainstream Judaism of the temple was in the first century. So we got to keep that in mind. Now, the next thing that we want to talk about, though, is all of this Gnostic wisdom. Again, remember we were talking about the heresiologists? They had these, we only had these remnants, we only had these little quotes, these little fragments by this church father, Irenaeus or Eusebius, right? And um, finally, in 1945, a young boy was like treasure hunting in the Egyptian desert in this place called Nagamadi. And he threw a rock into a cave and he heard a clunk. And he goes in, and they would do that because they would throw rocks. If something sounded a little different, they knew that maybe a jar was in there. Because if it just ricocheted off the wall, it's probably just an empty cave. So he throws a rock in there and he discovers seven something, eight jars full of scrolls. Now, these scrolls he later takes to the antiquities market, and they turn out to be the Gnostic Gospels. And these Gospels are everything from the Gospel of Thomas, who we only had a fragment of before. Now we have the full text of the Gospel of Thomas. the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Judas, which gives an entirely different spin on the character of Judas, makes him almost like kind of a good guy, like he was kind of going along with the role that he was given. You have the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which makes her more of a leader of the church. Now, Mary Magdalene and Thomas, they are very important to the Gnostics because whereas the Roman church, their whole lineage is coming from Paul and Peter. And all fundamentalist Christianity today is basically Pauline Christianity. And Paul was preaching to the Gentiles, and he was, in the Roman church, it's basically to this day, a remnant and a continuation of these Pauline doctrines. Whereas the Gnostics, they were actually had that same apostolic lineage that Rome claims, but through Philip or through Thomas or through Mary Magdalene. So you still have, even in the Eastern Church, in the Eastern Orthodox, they have their apostolic lineages through Mark or through Philip, like this. It doesn't all have to go through Peter or Paul, like Rome says, right? So um, you have the secret book of John, which really elaborates the whole Gnostic myth. The Gnostics talk about how there's the original invisible God, and then there is the lesser deity known as the demiurge. And the demiurge created this world and is keeping us enslaved in this world. And the whole Garden of Eden, they flip the whole Garden of Eden story basically. And the serpent is actually Jesus trying to give the apple of gnosis to Adam and Eve because the lower creator, the demiurge, wants to keep them imprisoned. But the invisible spirit, Jesus is trying to give them knowledge, gnosis, so that they can leave the Garden of Eden and uh, access the true knowledge of being like God. So the Gnostics, they flipped a lot of the original ideas and traditions of the mainstream church at the time and even mainstream Judaism at the time. And you can wonder, maybe it was a reactionary thing. They were reacting to the oppression of the Temple of Jerusalem. The Essenes were known to reject the Temple of Jerusalem because they believed it had become corrupt. It was all about animal sacrifice, and it was a big money making endeavor. And Jesus came flipping over tables and saying, "You've made the house of the Lord a den of thieves," right? So he was mad. He was part of that group that was not so happy about what was going on with the Jewish priesthood. So I think that's all the time I have, yeah? Couple minutes to wrap it up. Okay. Now, before I wrap it up, I just want to mention Valentinus in the gospel, in the Gnostic Gospels, in the Nag Hammadi library. We found one of the books is called the Gospel of Truth, and it's believed to be written by Valentinus. Now, Valentinus was this close to becoming the Pope of Rome. So this shows you how close the Gnostics were at the time. They didn't call themselves Gnostics. They were part of the church. They just called themselves Christians. But they were hanging out with Valentinus. They were like, the heresiologists were like, don't hang out with Valentinus and his people. But they were congregating in the same places a lot of the time. So you see like what was going on. Now to wrap up, why are these Gnostic Gospels so important? They're so important because I wanted to touch briefly on the Inquisition. You know, I mentioned how these groups were slaughtered, tortured, killed. Whether it was in the first century and you had, the Rome persecuting the Christians, like Saul, for example, he originally was persecuting the Christians, or you have all the way up in the Middle Ages with the Cathars, even up to the witch trials. If you were reading any of these books, if you believed that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had like some sort of romantic relationship, which the Cathars did, you would be murdered. You would be tortured and killed. You would be burnt at the stake. A lot of there's theories that some of the witches, it wasn't that they were casting spells necessarily. Yes, there is Christian magic. And so, yes, they were casting spells sometimes, but it's possible that they were spreading esoteric knowledge. You know, whether that's herbology or it's angelology or it's tarot or it's secrets about Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Any of these topics was a threat to Rome at the time, and you would be killed for it. You would be tortured. They would try to get you to confess, and then that's where we have some of these crazy confessions, which are probably actually all accurate. Because imagine if you were being tortured, you might confess to anything, right? The Knights Templar were killed by the Roman Church. That's why Friday the 13th is considered bad luck. 1307, Friday the 13th, hundreds of Knights Templar were killed. They were originally an order of the Catholic Church, right? But then the Catholic Church killed them, right? Ordered them to be killed because they started to, they started to threaten the power of the Catholic Church. So, why are these so important? Because today we have the blessing, we have the freedom to learn about this stuff. This wisdom is liberating. It can free you from all the bullshit. Sorry, excuse my language. That the church doctrine has fed us, and it can help us see the truth of what the original Gnostics were teaching, what the original Jesus movement was teaching, um, secret practices, secret traditions that you can utilize to enlighten yourself, become healthier, happier, manifest your dreams. All this stuff about the law of attraction. New thought is very affirmative prayer. Law of attraction, mind over matter. This is all Gnostic philosophy. So all of this stuff is carrying over into today. So these are so important because we have the freedom, we have the the liberty to study this stuff and allow ourselves the wisdom and the knowledge that the church for so long didn't want us access to. And so it is so important. We should all study the Gnostic Gospels. I invite you to start with like the Gospel of Thomas. It's one of the most popular. It's all sayings of Jesus. There's no narrative about Jesus did this or did that. It's just wisdom sayings of Jesus. And they're all like very profound, enigmatic, kind of parable type sayings. And I've gained so much wisdom from studying the Gnostics, and it's just opened up an entire world to me. And there's an entire world of scholarship, which is so exciting. Like, this was only 1945 that these were discovered. You know, the Gospel of Judas was only discovered, it was only released in 2008. 2008, the Gospel of Judas just came out. So
Wow.
this is groundbreaking stuff, right? And if you haven't read the Gospel of Judas yet, read it, right? They didn't want you to read it for a reason. Remember, they specifically designed it this way that you don't know about this stuff. So that's why this is so important. It's really uplifted and changed my life for the better. And I feel like it's gonna bless you in many ways if you go on that discovery. So
Well,
so
thank
thank you very much
you.
for having me.
Thank you, Sakshi. You covered a lot of territory there.
Tried.
Wow. Well, okay. So now he gets about maybe a minute to rest on his laurels, and then I call him back into service with his other hat. Okay. Um, so we're going to circulate the Koa bowl shortly. And while that's happening, uh, Sakshi, in the role of music minister, will be. Oh my goodness, did that thing come apart? Uh, oh, okay. Stephen will help. Or maybe you could relocate that one if it's easier. Yeah. Oh, very good. So, one of the one of the teachings that I found kind of peculiar when I first got connected with New Thought was I'll share it with you. So we're just being shooting all the orthodoxy away this week. So let's just do it. Okay, so what it was is okay. I think maybe I'd been coming to New Thought for less than 4 years, and so certain Sundays, what the facilitator would, maybe we even had a minister then, but what they say is, take what you intend to put in the offering bowl, and um, say this: I am open to unlimited supply from unexpected sources. And then you put it into the offering bowl with that consciousness. You may do it if you wish. Okay, we ready, Sakshi? All right.
It's an original song called Sanctuary. The chorus is pretty easy to follow along, so
I'm gonna help
I
shepherd
invite you
the
to sing
bowl
with me.
because sometimes there's gaps. Okay, thank you for your very generous
I
Easter
know
donation.
a place we can go, a place to get away from the storm, a place so deep down inside. Oh, Jah will take us higher and higher, 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 higher. Oh, Jah will take us higher and higher, 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 higher. My heart is filled with so much desire. Yo, I step into the temple, it's simple. Revelations pour out my mental. I'm wishful for a better world. Visionary stargate, I make it unfurl. Eyes, lights, knowledge, and wise mind. Yo, we have to find the mystery within divine rhyme. I climb Jacob's ladder, chakras on my spine. The Kundalini serpent unwinds and aligns. It's time for the union of God and Goddess. Mary Magdalene and Yeshua blessed, incarnated from Osiris and Empress Isis. The oneness of I and I consciousness, supreme embellishment, ancient commanded script. That we building with the gods, whose wisdom heaven sent. I and I represent cosmic elements. You're the master perfect as a soul resurrect. Yo, I know a place we can go, a place to get away from the storm, a place so deep down inside. Oh, Jah will take us higher and higher, 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 higher,
You pretty
higher,
close. You
higher.
thought so.
My heart is filled with so much desire. higher. One more time. Higher, 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 higher. Oh, Jah will take us higher and higher. One more time. Higher, 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 higher. Oh, Jah will take us higher and higher. Thank you guys so much.
Woo!
Thank you.
Wow. It seemed like when we were all singing together, there were all of a sudden lots of birds appeared, and they were going higher and higher too. And the great New Thought dancers in the back there. Wonderful. Thank you. That was a lovely, lovely offertory. So now I just have a few announcements to share, and then we'll be complete. No, not quite. Announcements and then closing song. Okay. So next 3 Sundays at New Thought, Dreaming Bear, Kumu Kealaching, and Genevieve Brunet. A great series of programs. So that's April 30th. Next week is Dreaming Bear. He's speaking on radical reenchantment. The first Sunday of May, the 7th, Kumu Kealaching, Leo Hawaii, Hawaiian Voice. And both of those are doing, they're like Sakshi, they're doing both program and music. On the 14th, which is also Mother's Day, the 14th of May, Genevieve Brunet is speaking on the sacrum and its sacredness, exploring the craniosacral experience. And Viboda will be providing music. Okay, between Sundays, we've got 2 weekly classes going now. On Mondays from 4:30 to 5:30, uh, Sifu Jinan Wang, who was last week's speaker, teaches a 1 hour course Tai Chi, Qigong, and interesting warm up exercises before those. He says it's for all levels, um, but you may find yourself feeling a little bit, if you're a beginner, you can kind of be in the back and watch the more advanced students and try to copy them. But he never makes anybody feel he doesn't put you down. He helps you if you're not real skillful to begin with. I'm speaking as one of those people. And anyway, it's $15 a class. And Wednesdays 10 to 11, yoga with Jeanette. I haven't tried it out yet, but it sounds really good. All levels, personalized. She's a skilled, experienced teacher. Recently came over from the Pune side, I think. And it's $10 to $15 per class, sliding scale. That's daytime class, 10 to 11 on Wednesday. Okay, monthly events. Next week we've got one. We've got the produce giveaway, which is the last Sunday of the month. The time to share your abundance if you're a farmer or gardener, or even if you just have one fruit tree. So bring your abundance and enjoy what others have to share. So that's this next week, April 30th. Then the following week, the first Sunday of May, we'll be having the crystal bowl meditation. That'll be from 9 to 9:30 in the Honua room. There's no charge for that. You have the option to donate to New Thought if you wish. Service opportunities, we've got, well, if you enjoyed the Easter potluck, I think quite a few of you were there, please volunteer because we would like to resume the monthly potlucks starting in May. Um, so you can see me or any of the other board members if you're wanting to be part of the um, potluck experience. Could all the board members who are in the on the lanai right now, could you just raise your hand so people know who to talk to? Okay, excellent. uh, lay ministers. Um, so Patty Wall has been our most senior lay minister. She's been doing this for probably a decade, and but she wants to share that the responsibility and the blessing of doing that, and she can coach you on what's involved. So, Patty, raise your hand. Okay, so that's Patty. Well, you saw her present the lay today if you're here. And we can always use more Sunday service volunteers, greeters, setup, cleanup, tech help. Thank you to those of you that are already giving service. To volunteer for anything, you can just click reply to your weekly New Thought newsletter. And if you're not getting the New Thought newsletter, you can sign your name and email address in the guest book on the round table there, or you can just go to the website and sign up on the homepage. The website, it's long but logical, www.newthoughtcenterofhawaii.com, everything spelled out. There's little cards on that table that have all the basic New Thought information. Feel free to take one if you wish. So, are there any oh, wait, I know what I need. Okay, I'm going to talk about lunch in a minute, but first, are there any New Thought announcements that I forgot or that are fast breaking news? Like primarily from Terry. Doing what? Oh, that's right. Thank you. Um, okay, so lunch, and then Sakshi's going to talk about his offerings that he's offering through on Fridays. And there's a clipboard with, if you're interested in what he has to offer, you can sign your name and contact information on the clipboard. Okay, but first lunch. Okay, so um, we're New Thought is treating Sakshi to lunch at the Royal Thai Cafe in Keaho, which is the one that's not very far from the movie theater. And I would estimate 12:15. There, it takes a little while to sort of wrap up everything here. And unfortunately, the last time we went there, we had somebody that didn't know that and went straight, you know, after the closing song, and she was too early. It's possible to be too early. Okay, so 12:15 at Royal Thai. Raise your hand if you'd like to be part of that lunch experience. Okay, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Wow, we should probably say 10 just to be sure. Okay, okay, so 10, a group of 10 at the Royal Thai, 12:15. Super. Okay, now Sakshi, I did print a copy of the flyer. It's over there by the clipboard. Will you tell us about what happens on Friday?
So Fridays, right next to here, there's an office by our friend Darby. She does music here sometimes too. She has a little office literally right next here. And on Fridays, I've been doing a class, several classes, and the whole Gnostic stuff that we were talking about. A lot of the teachers and traditions, they teach that having a group in the Indian tradition is called a satsang. The more you can study with others, in the Kabbalah is supposed to be studied in a group. The more you can study with a group of like-minded people, the greater the wisdom can be, camaraderie. Um, it's said that when two or more minds are gathered, a third mind enters in. That's where downloads happen. The Holy Spirit enters in, and two minds synergize together, and wisdom can come in through a download. So I'm doing several classes. The first one is and it sometimes changes. I sometimes switch the schedule around, but there's going to be a prosperity study group, and we're going to study like wisdom from the Unity tradition, New Thought tradition, and other thoughtpreneurs. entrepreneurial mindset. And then we do a toning the chakras, which is basically you use vowel sounds with color breathing and color visualization and the musical scale. And we tone the different chakras according to a musical note, according to a different vowel sound, and a different color. And then we do a meditation. And then there's a kirtan class for those that are interested in learning kirtan. If you have a favorite kirtan, you're like, teach me this one. I can teach you how to play, or I can teach you like the basic instruments from the harmonium, the kartals, the mridanga drum, and then we do an actual Gnostic study group where, kind of like today, we talk about different topics. I've done one on St. Patrick's Day recently. We did one on Easter, Gnostic, esoteric significance of Easter. Um, Things like that. Go on the calendar, we'll look at different things, we'll study different topics, and then we do like a kirtan at the end. So it's kind of like a merging of Gnostic study group with kirtan, and it's all donation based. Um, I simply ask like for a love donation, and you can come all day for several classes or just come for one. And
What's
usually
the
it starts around
beginning?
2 or 3 o'clock, and then I go till about 8 o'clock. So I'm here
Okay,
all day pretty
two to
much.
2 to 8.
So around 2 or 3 to 8 p.m. And the Gnostic study group and Kirtan is the last one of the day. It's usually 6 to 8. And then the first one is typically the prosperity study group, and then like kirtan class for those that really want to learn how to do kirtan. And then we do the meditation, toning the chakras, and then we'll go into our Gnostic study group, and I'll have a little lecture prepared, and then we'll do a kirtan. And if you have a kirtan you want to play, you can, that's a point where you can bring your song and share with us. Um, and sometimes we're gonna, maybe watch a movie. We might watch a little documentary. We might have some exercises, switch it up. I do like the Blue Zone projects, and I touch on the Hallelujah diet. And I have different topics, and so I'm gonna do specials every once in a while. But that's the general schedule that I have.
Thank you.
Yep,
That's exciting. And this started fairly recently,
fairly
right?
recently,
Yeah.
about a month and a half ago, I
So it
started.
sounds like it's still being sort of in a creative mode.
It's very
But if
creative
you
still.
liked
Yeah,
what you experienced today and you just want to be kept informed, sign that. Hey, Aaron, could you hold up the picture of the flyer? Yeah, because you can, we only have the one, but you can take a picture of it and you can also sign the clipboard and then Sakshi will know how to contact you.
yeah. Put your
Yeah,
email, and if
yeah.
you're like on any other social media that you prefer, put that down too. But email is good. I have an email list. So
All right. Well, I think we're ready to circle up for the closing song. And there's one of the word sheets that fell off. If someone in that back corner can hold it up, then the people on this side of the circle will be able to see the words better. Well, last week it was on that back table. Maybe it flew away. Well, you can always lip sync, you know. Okay. Ah, Stephen found it.